Hello everyone. I thought I'll just make a video today about intakes. I'm here in my garage. Have the IS here. The RX 350 is there on the driveway. It's pretty nice outside. It's February in Calgary. As you know, it typically snows, but it's warm, sunny. No snow anywhere on the ground. So it's been pretty warm for a February month. So here's the RCF. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'm about to do for the intake. So here's the intake the way it stands today. You can see that it's not the stock intake. Essentially, it has an aftermarket, that's AFE power cold air intake. So you see the blue elbow for the intake. And this piece here came with that AFE power intake. Now the issue that happened, this hinge over here, because this is some rather cheap plastic that they use. They didn't really use a really good quality material there. So the hinge that latches, this latch is the stock latch that uses this hinge to really lock this mechanism into place. It kind of cracked, so I had to use duct tape to kind of really tape it up. And this intake, I installed it myself, was pretty straightforward. I had to take this piece here, replace this pipe, and then the coupling over there, and this is all OEM. So once I had two options. One was to try and get this replacement part, or probably go with another option, right? So I inquired AFE Power to see how much this little plastic box would cost. So it was like $170 US shipped. So when you factor in the conversion rate from US to Canadian dollars, and then you put in duties and all that stuff, especially with the whole tariff business, it just wasn't worth it. It would have ended up costing me almost $300. And for about $700-800, almost just a few $100s more, you could get another option, right? So I just didn't really want to spend that, and then all the things that go with getting the replacement. So I didn't want to go with. I do like this this blue pipe, so this is something that I really want to see if I could keep. Basically, so what I decided to do was that I'm gonna go with another option. So I was trying to look for something that has a much better quality on this one, and then the other option originally when I bought this one was the AEM cold air intake. Now I decided against that. I decided to go with this one because I like the fact that I wanted to keep this two-staged factory intake box here. I didn't want to remove it at that time, so I went with this option. With the AEM, you basically have to remove this and put, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So basically, that's why I decided not to do it this time, because of a few things that I've learned about the stock intake that I didn't know at that time necessarily. I decided to go with a different option. Basically, what happens with this stock intake is that you have air being fed over here. It goes into this air box, and then the two-staged is here. It's pulling air from here. This flap opens and closes at around in the 2015 to 2019 RCFs. It opens at about 3600 RPM. They modified this intake box a little bit in the 2020 plus, so it opens at 2800 RPM in that car, right? So what happens is that I've experimented with disconnecting this vacuum line. What that happens is that then this flap remains open. When the car starts, this flap closes. So if you have disconnect the this plug here, sorry, not the vacuum line, this plug here, I just took this plug out. It remains open. So the car completely feels torqueless below that, and the reason for that is because it's getting hot air from the engine bay. This engine really runs very hot. It's a very high compression engine. Almost 13-to-1 compression ratio. It's a very high strong engine, almost close to in stock form, close to 100 horsepower per liter. So it's a very extremely tuned engine. So that's one of the reasons probably why it runs very hot. So this engine bay is full of, so we have the heat extractor here. This kind of extracts all the hot air. But unfortunately, when you're driving slow, below 3600 RPM, it's essentially not bringing in enough cold air from outside to negate the hot air that's circulating around in the engine bay. So what happens is that hot air is the enemy of power. So whenever you have hot air mixing with fuel, it's going to combust a lot faster than it needs to before the full compression stroke is complete. So what it does is that it robs you of power. You want to have very cold, dense air, very cold, dense, with a lot of moisture and water vapors in that air. So what happens is that once you start driving fast, this thing starts to take over. So from here, it's bringing in cold air into the air box. Then it would start to negate the hot air that's coming from the engine bay. Now the problem with the stock air box is that it actually still does not get cold enough here for this to start getting really cold. That's the part that I realized after I saw some of the RR Racing the data logging they did on the air box. They said even after you're driving like 70-80 miles per hour, the engine bay temperature is still 119 Fahrenheit, which is very high. So that's the part that I didn't know. That's the flaw with the stock airbox. So this is going to still keep bringing in hot air, even though this one is bringing in cold air. This is bringing in hot air. So that flaw carries over with this intake as well. So I wanted to maintain this dual stage intake at that time, like 5-6 years ago. But now with that new knowledge that I got, I was like, okay, I gotta do something different. Now other carbon ones, this one is also, it's got this area is gonna become whole carbon heat. It's gonna get covered and sealed with a carbon, top. So the other ones that like Group M, and they're like $3,000, $4,000. It's not really worth it for this one is essentially it's a similar concept to those ones as well. So I'll show that to you once I have it installed. So essentially what's going to happen is that this is all going to come out. I am going to try to keep this air box, and then inside this box there's a big velocity stack, which is like a big filter, round filter that you must have seen. So that replaces the stock paper, so it gives you better airflow. So then AEM is also the same thing, but it's this pipe is different diameter. But I believe somebody has done that where they've kept this blue, because this blue goes with the intake manifold really well. It's really nicely flows well. And this is all going to come out. We'll try to keep this one here, and then basically put the either clean this one. This one was a oil filter, so either keep this oil filter or maybe the new dry one from AEM and this whole box is going to get replaced with the AEM box. So what's going to happen is no longer going to have the dual stage, where it opens up at 3600 RPM. This one it would have to be sort of like disconnected, and then it would just be plugged in. It would not really, the signal that comes here would no longer it won't respond back. So what's going to happen is that it's going to only get cold air from outside. This is going to all get sealed, so there's nothing coming from the engine bay into here, and then this is going to be the one that is going to be bringing in cold air. So even below 3600 RPM, when it's very hot in the engine and not enough cold air coming out it would still be getting only cold air from outside, from here and then from here, but nothing from the engine bay. So that's something that is promising about that one that I wasn't aware of. Maybe if I would have, in hindsight, I would have gone with the AEM. Now that I'm aware of that, but at least maybe there's a chance I can still keep this. I really like this blue one, like I've said that before. So the AEM is gonna replace this intake. When I installed this, Power wise, it wasn't much different. Maybe a little bit more mid-range torque. At that point I only had exhaust. I didn't have all the other mods that I put on after that, but it had like some mid-range punch that I remember that I felt. And then there was a, under load, when you're in low RPM high gear, I would get like a growl in there. So that's the only difference that I saw. But they advertised like something like 10 horsepower more, but I'm not sure if that was the case. Now with the AEM, they say like I'll show you the dyno sheet that is in the box. So it's about 18 plus 18 wheel horsepower. I've heard, because it pulls in cold air in just from outside, no warm air, it's gonna have more power throughout the whole mid-range, and you're gonna have more intake noise coming, which is what the main reason that I really want to get. I want to have more induction noise. If you guys really know the old E46 M3 CSL, that really like metallic guttural intake, that's something that I really yearn for. So hopefully that it's with, you get a lot of induction noise with the RCF, but it's very smooth. Like it's sort of like, it's not like that, it doesn't have that metallic guttural. It's a lot of noise, but it's very refined and smooth. So that one probably would add a little bit more rawness. So probably we'll see once I do some videos on how the intake sounds. Now I have a lot of mods like exhaust and all that stuff, but hopefully that really comes through. So I'll just close this. So now we're talking about the intake. So this is what we're looking at. So this is something that's sitting there to be waiting to be installed. So now that weather is pretty decent, like, so I'm gonna try to get it installed pretty soon, and then maybe do some videos on it. We'll see what the plus 18 wheel horsepower and the most importantly, I've heard from people, like there was somebody who installed it on a GSF, and then they said in the low RPM it's pretty close to stock, but it sounds glorious once you go from 5,000 RPM to just under like 7,500 RPM. You really get a glorious noise. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm not much, like I've said that before, I'm not much into big horsepower. This car right now as it stands, especially with, if let's say the intake is gonna give some more power boost, we're looking at probably 515 horsepower to the crank with the other mods I've got. Like I've got ECU software tune, I've got a full exhaust, I've got the intake we talked about, I've got pulleys, and so these are the main things that add power. So we're talking maybe like 440 horsepower to the wheels, which is roughly about 515 horsepower to the crank. Stock it makes about 4 or 5, maybe 410. I believe our racing dyno their own test RCF, which had almost 100,000 miles at about 427 wheel horsepower. So that was pretty a big shocker with a car that high of mileage was making that much power for something that's supposed to be making 472 from the stock. So if you factor in the drivetrain loss of about 17% for a rear-wheel drive front engine car, that's a very good strong number. But that's what Lexus cars are. You would look at a lot of history, and I would make a video on that. Lexus cars, they run a lot stronger in real life than they do in magazine tests, and that's a big topic to discuss. There are several factors that are affecting that, why magazine tests don't really truly reflect what the cars are truly capable of. That goes back to 2000s, 2003, 2005, 2006. I'll go through all the history of what the magazines, and some of the long-term cars that were tested, how they were just, blowing through their initial performance tests. Like, for example, the RX 400h that I used to have 2008, they had a long term on that one. So they tested at 40,000 miles and then brand new. So it beat the original brand new test by half a second. So this the 0 to 60 was 6.6 seconds, which was mind blowing for a car like that. It was like an electric hybrid SUV, and 6.6 for a 2008 car was for an SUV was crazy. But that was achieved with a 40,000 miles one. When they tested it brand new, it was like 7 seconds or something, right? So, anyways, that's a pretty long topic. There's a lot of things from my own learnings of owning this car for 8 years, and then also the IS 350 F Sport. I have ran this car against 135 and 335, and trust me, this car does not really give anything to those cars. The magazines would make you believe this car does not really, for its time when it was against 335s, made 300 horsepower. This one makes 311. So the magazines will make you believe, because naturally aspirated, a high strung engine, it doesn't have the torque to compete. But obviously we're talking rolling race, not drag race. But even off the line, it's really, with all-wheel drive, this thing really gets out really fast, So anyways, that's another topic. But yeah, back to the RCF. We'll make a video once this is installed, show you the new installation. Also do a few videos on basically the sound and some throttle response, through the different gears at different RPMs. So there's a bunch of tests that I couldn't. Maybe further down the road, I'll try to do maybe a draggy again. My best ever that I achieved was 12.3 at 118 miles per hour, but that a couple of years ago after I installed the pulleys. But that's with 4,000 feet density altitude. So I'm really, this is Calgary, so this is at very high altitude. We have very thin air here at 4,000 feet. So thinner air is always gonna, even if you have turbocharged, it would still not make as much power as it would when you're really at sea level. So 12.3 would translate to about 11.8, 11.9 if I was at the sea level. That's what the formulas that they give for that is used in the aviation industry, those ones, and also for drag racing. That's what it translates to. Anyway, so that's with the car that is as it stands. Maybe I'll do draggy. Maybe I could get another couple of tenths out of it, but we'll see. So until next time, when the car has the intake on, I'll make another video and then we'll go from there. All right, thank you. Bye.